Hello friends and welcome back to the C.Gars channel. Today me and Billy are back with a special guest, George of 1573 Cigars. George, thank you so much for joining us today. As always, it's a pleasure to have you here, hear from your knowledge and your past experiences. Thank you for coming down. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Even better now.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Doing well. It's good to sit down, enjoy a nice cigar, sit with good company, all of that.
That's what it's all about, and it's a real
Exactly.
pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Pleasure is all ours.
Yes,
So-
of course. So today we are taking a look at a brand new cigar on the UK market. This one is exclusive to cigar stores across the UK. What cigar is it? Would you mind introducing it?
Of course, it's the Tabernacle David by Foundation Cigar Company. I really love this cigar. It's
Likewise.
flat out one of my favourite cigars.
I was going to say, we say the same all the time. Every time we get the opportunity to sit down with one of these cigars, it's a pleasure every single time. It brings absolute joy from start to end every time.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when you first brought them in and you were basically like, zip it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to shout from the rooftops because when I had it, I was like, this is like incredible. And
Phenomenal.
I think it's safe to say that it's definitely in my top 3.
Wow,
So I'm excited.
that's really high
Yeah.
accolade actually. It's also, it is one of my favourite cigars. I have a hard job not smoking them all.
I can see why.
Yeah,
That's why they're so limited.
Yeah, I mean, it is so the David is like a limited release extension of the Tabernacle line. It's released quarterly in quite small numbers, in part because it's really hard to roll that shape.
Yes.
Not many people roll that shape, and in part because of the quality of the tobacco used is quite astounding. There just isn't a huge amount of it. So it's really incredible stuff, this.
It's a beautiful cigar, and the band is just like, we say this every time about Foundation, like their bands are just like next level.
Yeah, I don't think many other brands, I mean they do, but the attention to detail across every brand, and 9 times out of 10, as I say, when you take the band off and you have the logo on the inside of it as well, I think that's just a touch of class that kind of you don't see all that often from other brands.
Yeah.
So it's another thing that we kind of noticed and thought they really care about their product.
Yeah, they do, and you're right. The branding is really on point, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, it's a painting. It actually, literally, is a painting on the band.
Oh.
They have an in-house artist, Thief Operandi, and he works on all of the artwork for Foundation. So it's actually all done by the same artists.
That's really cool.
Oh, okay. That's something we didn't know before, so it's another unique selling point from the brand as well. But as you say, the care and the intricacies of the band is just phenomenal. Really, really
Really
nice.
is, yeah. They stand out in the humidor as well, like the wrapper on it,
Yeah.
like the dark wrapper, the colours on it, the gold, just really pops.
I was going to say, I mean, I always go back to the point, but black and gold is kind of sort of all
It's
I ever
your
wear.
thing,
So
you know?
exactly. So this, as soon as you walk into the humidor, this kind of takes my eye straight away. From every sort of visionary aspect of this cigar, just sort of stands out and screams. Something that a lot of people come into the humidor and kind of look towards, right? This, as you say, it's one of those. It's kind of unique. The shape, the band, the story, everything kind of builds up to that perfect experience.
Exactly.
Yeah, it does. I mean, and you're right, it really stands out, doesn't it? Something I find really interesting about this is the fact that quite often we look at really dark cigars and we think they're going to be overbearingly strong. And yeah, it is a full-bodied cigar, but at no point is it going to be overbearing. It's full in flavour, it's full in an intensity of flavour, but the actual strength is wonderfully balanced.
Yes.
And
I find that with the other Tabernacle Toro, you kind of find the same thing, because as you say, you look at that dark wrapper, you look at the strength profile and you think, oh, this one's going to be quite heavy, but for yourself even, you tried it for the first time and it was something that you didn't really expect. It was, as you say, really, really well balanced, offers you a lot of flavour, and that, as you say, the strength kind of tones down and cuts into that flavour, which is really, really nice.
Exactly. It's like heavy and mellow at the same time.
Yeah.
So to create that balance is just incredible. Like you don't really get that often.
And the sweetness you get from the wrapper as well is phenomenal.
Exactly. Yeah. What would you say the significance of the name is? Like, Like, where did that come from? What's the story behind the name?
Well, so it's a really good question, because the Tabernacle line, the sort of regular Tabernacle line, has Haile Selassie on the band.
Okay.
Now, Haile Selassie was 225th king of Abyssinia. He was the last emperor of Ethiopia. And the Ethiopian church claims to hold the Tabernacle, which held the Ark of the Covenant. So that is part of the reason why Haile Selassie is on the band. But then Haile Selassie's lineage dates all the way back to King Solomon and David. And this is really an homage again to those ancient Ethiopian references. With both the Davids and then its counterpart, which doesn't come into the UK unfortunately, but you've got the Goliath, which is a larger double figurado perfecto.
Okay.
So that is why it's called David. And the other thing, I think, obviously you've got David and Goliath on the band there, right? And this is the David. And the whole point really is the fact that it might seem like quite a small cigar, but it does smoke for a fair amount of time. And it does knock quite a lot of larger cigars out of the way.
I was going to say, it burns fairly slowly. I mean, we've been going for what, sort of 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah.
And you're kind of only an inch in, so the burn's really slow, which again is something kind of makes that experience last. It kind of gives you a lot more flavours, everything like that. You kind of experience it to its fullest. If it kind of burns straight through or really quickly, you kind of miss out on a little bit of the experience, right? So I think, the shape and everything kind of just, as I keep saying, it comes back, but it's just perfect.
I wouldn't say it's one of those cigars that you want to take out to a pub and smoke with your mates.
No.
I think this is one you really have to sit back and think about and really appreciate, which is what we're doing now.
Fantastic.
Again, it's an honour to have it.
Of course.
Fantastic.
It's also a shame that we won't ever see the Goliath.
Yeah. Well, I never say never.
Hopefully one day.
I never say never. But yeah.
You
I
have
never
to
say
pull on
never.
some strings and see what you can do.
So yeah.
Of course. What is the blend behind the David? Is it the same as the Tabernacle Toro?
Yeah, it is actually. Technically, I mean, on paper, the blend is the same. You've got that Connecticut broadleaf wrapper from the chief of broadleaf himself, the very best Connecticut broadleaf you can get. And then Mexican San Andreas binder from the man who brought Mexican San Andreas to premium cigars. And then you've got fillers from Esteli, Jalapa, Ometepe, and some from the Jamastran Valley in Honduras. However, on paper that is the same as the Tabernacle Toro. But particularly with cigars of this Vitola, you really have to tweak that blend to make it work. It'll be in different ratios, there'll be a bit of this, a bit of that, you know. It really goes into looking at a cigar with flavour as the real sort of forefront, rather than matching the strength or anything like that. And so, yeah, same sort of blend, but totally tweaked.
I suppose the Vitola itself as well, with it being sort of tapered at one end or both ends, you experience the blend itself in a different way that way anyway, with it being more compact, different ratios as you mentioned, and then you bring it in, it kind of opens up once the ring gauge gets into that thicker stage. It really does open up and give you all that flavour in your forefront. It sits on your palate, it lasts. I mean, I don't know about yourself, but it's just, it really does. It does everything that it says on the tin.
Yeah, I feel like with the complexity, it's so complex, but it's beautiful and it really works. And I said this to Anthony recently. I said, there's sort of a grey area with complexity. If you go past that grey area, it becomes too much.
Yeah.
And this sits just before that grey area, and it is perfect.
That's really interesting. So you find that there's, and I haven't thought of it like that before, but I can totally see what you mean. So there's like, it becomes too complex almost, and then it just becomes muddy.
Yeah,
Once it reaches that point. That's really cool. And you're right, because this is really clear. You know, it's really clear yet complex.
Yeah, I mean, won't say names obviously, but there's other cigars that we've had, and we were really, really excited to see them come in, and we tried them, and there was just so much going on that it kind of takes away from the experience, and it's like, it's giving me too much of this and too much of this, and it's kind of, they're not balanced, it's not working together in harmony, it's kind of counteracting each other.
Oh.
So it kind of, as I say, takes away from that experience and that enjoyment factor. But safe to say, I mean, this really doesn't do that. This works perfectly. The balance is exquisite.
Of course, and the flavour notes are just...
It's almost sweet, sort of bready, a little bit of savoury note in there as well. There's not much spice, right? As you say, with the dark wrapper, you would kind of assume there's going to be a bit of spice and things like that, but you don't seem to get that straight away.
I get an ever so slight spice.
Okay.
But it's just in the background, just sitting there. But the sweetness and that like you said, the breadiness, that's just it.
Sweet and savoury, just hand in hand.
I mean, I'm lost in words. How amazing it is. But.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because you put it really well earlier, that malted barley note.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I really love that. And that really melds with those sort of deep, rich, cocoa, earthy tones.
I feel like you get that a lot off the Tabernacle Toro as well, that sort of that undertone as well.
Yeah.
But again, Vitola sort of changed that blend.
And you've got that really lovely natural sweetness from the Connecticut broadleaf down the sides of the palate.
Yes.
And I think that is one of the keys that balances the cigar out. Because you've got so many rich and dark and earthy and really viscous notes from all of those really rich tobaccos, particularly from Ometepe and Jalapa. And then that Connecticut broadleaf really balances that out with that sweetness and that oiliness. And then you've got those notes of soiliness from the Homastron Valley in Honduras. Those notes of the actual earth, the soil, the minerality.
I was going to say, you can really get the minerals in the smoke as well once you pass it around your palate. You can almost chew on it. I know we say that quite a lot, but it's thick. The plumes of smoke coming off of the cigar itself, just whilst it's sitting here, is amazing. There's a lot of flavour, there's a lot of output, it's everything you want.
Honestly,
it's one of those cigars that when I first smoked it, I was like, where's all that smoke going?
Yeah.
It's burning quite slowly, but there's like plumes of smoke coming off all the time. I haven't figured that out yet. But
yeah, it's a weird concept, right?
Yeah.
I mean, who can judge?
Yeah, who can judge?
I feel like, especially when it comes to cigars, obviously it's great when people get different flavour notes from it. But it's even more special when everyone can agree on flavour notes.
Yeah.
It feels like it's been perfected.
Yeah.
In that sense.
There's kind of no deviation from that. It's like they've gone for this and they've hit it perfectly.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think with Nick's blending, that's really apparent. Because obviously he's been blending cigars since 2003, right? And then he had so many years of perfecting it through trial and error, really. And also with cigars of this size and this shape. So this is really the culmination of his efforts in that sense.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, this speaks that experience takes you a long way.
I was going to say, he's essentially the Willy Wonka of cigars.
I mean, you could put it like that.
That's a fair shout. That's a fair shout. I think he'd like that.
He probably would. It's quite entertaining.
I'd like that. That's a fantastic thing.
Makes you very unique.
Yeah.
Stands out, I suppose.
That's a fantastic thing.
So when it comes to the shape, the figurado, what is the significance of this shape? Because it's a beautiful shape, but it's also one of the most difficult to roll.
Yeah, it is. So the figurado, and I've actually got an unlit one here to give a good perspective, but the figurado is a really unique shape. All cigars were this shape until the mid-late 19th century, when the parejo, the straight-sided cigar, was invented for the speed of rolling.
Okay.
But this here is something straight out of the cigar catalogues of the 1920s, really. Particularly styled on the cigars that were rolled in Connecticut, quite often using Cuban leaf and Connecticut broadleaf and Connecticut shade in the earlier 20th century and the late 19th century. So when you're smoking a Perfecto, it does something really interesting. It's something that I find a lot of people shy away from initially because people are so used to straight-sided cigars, people are so used to parejos, that it does give a different feel. It is a different smoking experience. But what it does is it changes the intensity throughout the cigar in a really interesting way, which means that you're going to have great development, even in a shorter format, something that's 5 inches like that. Because when you're looking at the way that a cigar smokes, a lot of it's down to aperture, both through which you're drawing the smoke and through which you're drawing the air into the flame.
Okay.
So if you start the cigar out at a narrower point, it's going to be more intense in flavour profile. It's going to burn at a different temperature than the wider point. Therefore you'll get different tasting notes, even with exactly the same blend, down to the same percentage. You'll get different tasting notes because it's burning at a different temperature. So that really makes it develop massively throughout, because you're constantly changing aperture, you're constantly changing, if in a way, the temperature at which the tobacco burns. And it really is my favourite shape of cigar perfecto. I really, really love them.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it makes me feel like Groucho Marx, makes me feel like Brunel. But yeah, but it's just a wonderful smoking experience every time.
It's incredible to hear that they used to, this was like the main shape back in the day. But
You would think it would go Parejo into this, right?
yeah, you'd think so. Like, so why did they choose this shape?
It's a good question. I don't have an answer for you there, really. I have a feeling, I have a hunch, in the fact that it would have been, if you think about it, if you roll a straight-sided cigar, it's actually quite hard to keep it together. That's one of the challenges,
Okay.
to stop it from unravelling. But if you roll a cigar that's tapered at both ends, it's like a parcel. So although it's the hardest and slowest to roll in one respect, it helps transport it in another way.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting.
So yeah,
I would have gone straight to appearance. I was like, oh, it's just adds an extra characteristic.
yeah.
There's always a...
I have a feeling that that's why, and it is just a feeling, but I have a feeling that that's one of the reasons why it was essentially the original shape of a cigar.
Oh, okay. See, I definitely wouldn't have thought that.
No, that's interesting, because I feel like back then, appearance wouldn't have mattered too much.
Yeah.
Because didn't they at one point only used to make cigars with binders and not wrappers? So,
Yeah.
Crazy how it all developed. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine now going into a cigar store and seeing one which is made with just a filler and the binder.
Yeah. I mean, 9 times out of 10, the people on the market for cigars nowadays probably wouldn't pick it up.
No.
They definitely wouldn't. We're too spoiled nowadays. We get
It's
nice,
true.
beautiful presented cigars like these.
It's true, and if you think of it this way, right? Although that wrapper has been grown uncovered, that is not grown in the shade because it's a Connecticut broadleaf. Most wrappers are grown in the shade nowadays, right? And it creates that appearance, really fine, elastic, very even, and everything. But that only came in 1902. That's when we started using shade growing technique. So everything before then would have looked a bit rustic, And yeah, you're right. A binder isn't a very nice looking thing, is it?
No.
I always say, that everyone at some point should cut a cigar open to see what it looks like inside.
So you mentioned earlier, sort of off camera, about the 19th century and the sort of relationship that the David cigar has towards that time period. You also mentioned the Highclere Castle that I believe you have with you today, that you can kind of relay into it, and they kind of come as like a package that kind of go back to that sort of time.
Yeah.
So what can you sort of tell us about that?
So I think with Foundation and with the way that Nick Lillo works, there's always a sense of history there, because there's always a sense of history behind every cigar, no matter what cigar that is, no matter where it comes from. In a way, no matter when it was made, there's always that sense of history. So in the case of the David, that shape, that vitola, is something straight out of the catalogues of the late 19th century and early 20th century. And then, with the Highclere Castle Victorian, that is essentially a modern 19th century cigar.
Okay.
So what they did for this is Lord Carnarvon, Adam von Gutkin and Nick looked through the records of which cigars were smoked at Highclere Castle in the late 19th century by the likes of Edward VII, and using Nick's historical knowledge have recreated a 19th century cigar as best they could using modern tobaccos. and also in fairly modern sizes, which is really interesting. So in the case of the Highclere Castle Victorian, for instance, no wrappers were grown in the shade until 1902. So this is an Ecuador Habano 7th priming wrapper. That's one part of the example as to what makes it kind of a Victorian cigar. So at the time, wrappers came from quite high up on the plant, really unusual, and the 7th priming is way up on the plant. And that is grown in the sun in Ecuador, but it's in a place that has a huge amount of cloud cover. So you still get that elasticity, you still get that really high oil content, you still get that wonderful sort of vein-free wrapper. But it really helps bring it home. And he's A-B'd, historical cigars to create that cigar. It's really a unique piece, that. Unique.
You kind of get the best of both worlds, and a bit of history as well as a bit of modern day.
Yeah.
And kind of pulled it all into one specific cigar, which, again, the historical kind of stories behind these cigars kind of give that extra value or extra kind of
appreciation.
Yeah, 100%. I think it helps with the whole thing. It's just amazing, as you say, another uniqueness behind Foundation and what they're kind of sort of going for right now.
It is. I think it's really, there's so much depth to cigar history, and cigars in a way have changed the world in a way as they've, throughout their progression, cigars have been there at really key points. And it's really important to remember that history, and also to remember old techniques, old sizes, because they really bring something to the table.
Of course.
They really bring something unique, such as with the David. I mean,
Yeah, spectacular.
I would only, I've said it before, but I have a hard job not smoking all of them. And it is in part because of that shape. So yeah.
Incredible. And I feel like if you guys want to learn more about the Highclere Castle, then you can watch mine Billy Cigar of the Month for January, of which you sampled that cigar.
I did, yeah.
And you enjoyed it. So.
Of course, as always.
But yeah, just being able to sit here and sample the Tabernacle David with you and Billy, it's just an absolute pleasure.
It's incredible.
Likewise. Yeah, likewise.
I really don't feel like your day's going to kind of pan out that way when you start, and then it kind of all becomes real, which is amazing.
Yeah, likewise. It's a real honour to be here and smoke this with you, and I'm just really glad that you enjoy it as much as I do.
Of course.
See ya.
Beautiful.
Yeah, as I say, pleasure is always ours.
Can we see anything new from Foundation soon?
There will be new releases in the coming months. Nothing's been fully announced yet, but we will have the second run of Senator, which is the Egyptian box, coming in imminently.
Okay.
Of which there are only 500 produced for the whole world every year.
I mean, I think that's the black box with the gold on it, right?
Yes, it's an exact replica of a storage box from King Tutankhamun's tomb.
So cool.
And it's quite amazing.
With the historical figures brought into the modern day, it's a really, really good sort of selling point.
It comes with a curse as well. So
once you open it, you can't ever close it. You just keep.
But everyone wants the curse. No one wants the cigar. But there's the there's no curse. There's no curse. But yeah, I also love that piece. That's another perfecto. It's a larger double figurado. So
wonderful. Well, George, thank you so much for joining us. As always, it's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
And I think what we'll do, we'll sit back and enjoy the rest of the cigars.
Of course. And we'll wait until our fingers burn, as you say.
Of course. If you guys want to learn more about the cigars, you can check out C.Gars.com. And until next time, stay safe and happy earthing. Peace.